Cities. We all know what they are, and I don't mean to alarm you, but you might be watching this from a city right now. Why do I say this? Well, did you know that cities can be dangerous? Not just physically, with higher rates of violent crime, but also psychologically? That's actually what we're going to be talking about today. It's not often discussed, but actually there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that city life can be harmful to our mental health. Studies have consistently shown that mental health issues like depression, anxiety, chronic stress are more common in urban environments than elsewhere. Interestingly though, not everyone is affected equally. How your brain processes rewards and responds to stress may play a critical role in how well you can adapt to the psychological challenges of city life, although no one is likely to adapt entirely. To understand why we might struggle in the first place, we need to go back to our distant past. Based on hominin skulls found in Jebel Irhoud, Morocco, it is estimated that anatomically modern humans, meaning humans biologically like us, have existed for around 300,000 years. And it's worth noting that finds from this period are rare, so this boundary is disputed, but for our purposes today it serves a reasonable approximation for the age of our species. Fast forward a great deal of time to between 13,000 and 11,000 years ago, and the first crops were domesticated in the Middle East, around the end of the last ice age, which makes sense. This shift to farming marked a fundamental change in lifestyle known as the Neolithic Revolution. Instead of living semi-nomadic lives following food and resources, people began to settle in one place and tend to crops. According to the British biological anthropologist and evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar, the human brain is structured to deal with no more than around 150 people, a concept known as Dunbar's number. This number represents the cognitive limit of stable social relationships a human can maintain. Dunbar developed this theory by studying the relationship between primate brain size and social group size, suggesting that a larger neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher level thinking, enables larger social groups. Some researchers suggest this number could be as high as 300, but Dunbar's number of 150 is widely referenced, and most researchers believe the true number likely lies between 100 and 250. Nevertheless, the groups are relatively small compared to modern standards. Some researchers take Dunbar's number as the upper limit of pre-agricultural group sizes, suggesting groups would rarely exceed 150 members. So for roughly 290,000 out of the 300,000 years we've existed, we lived in a relatively small, semi-nomadic group. But everything changed around 10,000 years ago with the adoption of farming. Towns and settlements began to form with increasingly large populations, and it's theorised that these early settlements emerged to protect large grain surpluses produced from farming. As our ability to grow and store food became more efficient, the size of our cities expanded. Today, around half of the world's population already lives in urban areas, and that's expected to rise to 2/3 by 2050. From an evolutionary perspective, this represents a rapid and dramatic change in lifestyle. Have we had enough time to fully adapt to this new way of life? Well, the answer based on current research appears to be no. I believe it is fair to say that the defining characteristic of a city is its dense population. If it were sparsely populated, it would cease to be a city by any standard definition. So if we want to understand whether cities are psychologically optimal for human beings, population density is a crucial factor to examine. Research suggests that the same negative relationship between cities and mental health also exists between population density and mental health, which strongly suggests this is the factor we should be looking at. For example, one study found that higher population density was associated with a 21% greater likelihood of elevated depressive symptoms among women and a 21% higher likelihood of life-ending thoughts amongst men, even after accounting for things like socio-demographic and lifestyle factors. Even if the true scale of the problem is only half as severe as this study seems to suggest, it's still a cause for serious concern, and that's not the only evidence we have as well. Other studies have found higher population density raises cortisol levels, which is a hormone responsible for regulating the stress response, alongside raising blood pressure. Higher population density increases anxiety, depression, and even rates of psychosis, which the researchers here linked to dense housing and lack of green spaces. In fact, higher population density amplifies negative emotion more generally, which the researcher here linked to increased aggression and crime rates. It has also been found to harm cognitive development and academic achievement, especially in children. It has been found to weaken social bonds and also to promote social withdrawal. The researcher here explained this as a result of excessive sensory input from urban life, which has been found to cause cognitive fatigue and distress. All of this research points to one thing: we might be moving towards a way of life that's both objectively and subjectively worse for us. But if cities are so bad for us, why do we continue to live in them in the first place? While the earliest settlements may have been built to protect grain surpluses from banditry, the reason why cities continue to exist have changed dramatically. Potential bandits today don't need to physically raid a town to extract wealth. They have other means of doing so. But that also brings us to a question. If cities are so detrimental to our mental health, why do we continue to flock to them in modernity? The answer largely comes down to economic efficiency. Cities exist because they make economic sense. It's simpler and more profitable when everything you need is closer rather than further away. When people, businesses, and resources are concentrated in one place, productivity tends to increase, costs are reduced, and innovation flourishes. For example, businesses benefit from their proximity to suppliers and employees and consumers. People move to cities because that's where the jobs, the infrastructure, and the services are. The productivity boost from being in a city is significant enough that for many people, it outweighs the negative psychological effects that might be experienced from living in a densely populated environment. But remember, our ancestors lived in small, semi-nomadic groups for the vast majority of our species' existence. It's likely that our brains are still more adapted to that way of life than this one. So while cities offer tremendous economic advantages, they do so at a psychological cost. It's a trade-off, really. Economic efficiency versus psychological well-being. And right now, most people are choosing the former. But with rates of mental health problems rising, is this really a good decision? At some point, we as a species will have to come to terms with the fact that economic efficiency is not the only thing we need to consider in our lives. And perhaps we could afford a little bit more inefficiency, I suppose, in order to see a significant increase in our psychological quality of life. I, for one, would like to see a world where we do not need to move to the city to get the best opportunities if we do not want to. Then we could live in a less dense local community, surrounded by nature, and live a life more consistent with our biology. There's a reason that many people do exactly that. Move out of the city for a better quality of life after they feel like they've benefited as much as they can from the economics of the city. It's my belief that moving away from city life would lead to greater psychological well-being overall for most people. If this is right for you or not, only you can decide. But thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.